What is up, you guys? Welcome to the Hangout. My name is BJ Kicks. I buy comics, I read them, and I review them, all for your viewing pleasure. And this is the Hangout. This is a live stream that we do every single Thursday around 7 p.m. Eastern when we're lucky and we're on time. So if you're watching this on the replay, first off, thank you for watching on the replay. And if you're here in the chat right now, go ahead and say what's up so that I know that you are here and watching. My man James is here. DC finally did something right. What's going on in WB Discovery? It's a good question. Good question. Tris is here. What's up, Tristan? Mary's here. Steven's here. We got a full house tonight already. Now, we have a packed show this evening. I want to review some comics that I read recently. DC just made a huge update to their subscription service. So we're going to talk about that. And on top of all of that, we're going to interview an independent creator. I didn't know if I wanted to say indie or independent, so I said independent, I guess. But we're going to interview an indie creator. His name is Mr. Omari Malik, and he's got a Kickstarter campaign that's running right now. So we're going to talk to him about that. And we're going to chat with each other the whole time and have fun while doing it. So before we get into the show too deeply, I want to give a shout out to the people that make it possible. So shout out to Organic Price Books. Organicpricebooks.com is the best place to look online for collected editions, trade paperbacks, omnis, absolutes, big art books, ridiculousness, all of it. Organic Price Books is having a fall sale right now. So there are select titles that are marked down like an additional 15%. And if you use my coupon code BJKicks at checkout, you'll save $2 on your order, no matter how discounted the prices already are, which is dope. Now, if you're ordering 3 books or more, best thing to do will be to use the code BJKicks, ship it together. That way, all your books arrive in one safe package and you save 5% while supporting the channel. So thanks Organic Price Books for sponsoring the channel and making shows like The Hangout possible. And I also couldn't go any further without thanking the channel family. One second. Excuse me. So we have a channel membership. If you see someone in the chat with a Joker face next to their name, that means they are a channel member. They're like the co-producers on the channel. So you guys help me create the content that I want to create and that you want to see versus the content the algorithm wants you to see. So huge shout out to all the channel family, whether you joined at the family level or the squad level. It's all appreciated. And this show literally could not happen without you. So thanks to everyone who's a member of the channel. And if you'd like to support the channel the same way, there's a join button somewhere on the screen, whether you're watching on the phone or not. What's up, Art? Love that profile pic. That's Jim Lee's cover to Batman 50, if I'm not mistaken. The wedding that wasn't. Gravy dipped grab handles. That's an interesting name there. What's up, man? How you doing? Focus Objective. What's up? What's up? Digital Blackface is back. Emmanuel. What's up? Bardock looking dope in the profile picture. Like it. I like it. So yeah, man, we got a packed show, like I said. Normally, this is the time where I would do recent pickups, but the pickups that I was waiting for in the mail, I don't think the mailman has come yet, which is weird because it's 7 o'clock. But anyway, so we can just go ahead and skip right to the comic book reviews of the week. Now, I've read a few books this week already. The only thing I've read from this week's slate of releases is Wakanda #1, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But I have been taking this time, all this time that I'm not spending making videos right now, trying to get caught up on my reading pile. And so I read Nightwing like 2 weeks ago, like all of it. I read Firepower a week before that, all of it. And then this past week, I got caught up on Superman, Son of Kal-El. I read every issue up through 15, and issue 16 came out this week. Haven't read that one yet. But I read Nightwing, and I was really excited about it. Like I really enjoyed Tom Taylor's Nightwing, and I was like, you know what? I need to jump back into Tom Taylor's Superman, the John Kent book, because I think it's gonna be dope. I jumped back into Superman, Son of Kal-El, and I gotta say, so they finished up the story arc with Henry Bendix, Lex Luthor, and well, those are the two villains basically. And so it's John Kent and Nakamura, his love interest, versus Lex Luthor and Henry Bendix. And this whole run has really been about John Kent sort of finding his identity, right? His sexual identity and his identity otherwise, like as a hero. What's his rightful place? How is he different from his father? Can he measure up to the legacy that his father has left so far? And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil this. I'm not going to spoil this. Um, but reading through issue 15, he's definitely answered that, right? Like he's done what he's been able to do. So if you reflect on the run, I think the defining feature of John Kent is that he's not fighting his villains like with his fists, right? He's not he's not battling the same problems. He's not approaching them the same way. Um, it's interesting to say that John Kent comes off as more compassionate. I don't know if he's necessarily more compassionate because Superman is a very compassionate hero, but he very much comes across as like appealing to the emotions of whoever is involved, whether they're a villain, whether they're a hero. Like everyone he comes across, he's like very interested in protecting their emotional well-being as well as their physical well-being. So he's been navigating this space as a legacy hero, doing things his own way against the advice of other heroes in his sphere. I guess I'll say that. Trying very hard not, trying to very hard not to spoil things. But the point is, I think the story arc between Henry Bendix, who is like a global dictator, he's not global, he's the president of a country, he's a dictator of a country. It's not Bialia. Is it Bialia? No, it's Gamora. The name of the country is Gamora. And yeah, so how do I want to give the plot? All right, basically Bendix is like trying to raise up an army of superpowered people. Um how, I'll leave that to you. How Lex Luthor is involved, I'll leave that to you to read as well. But John Kent sort of thwarts it all. And my criticism of this run, right? Or a few things that you kind of always can expect to get out of Tom Taylor books are really good pacing, nice heartfelt character interactions, and humor. And typically, the fourth thing that you get from Tom Taylor books is really good action, a lot of really good action. And I feel like that's what this book is missing is the action. But the pacing kind of tricks you into feeling like the book is action packed, if that makes sense. It's suspenseful, it's not necessarily action packed. There's a lot of the interpersonal drama and relationship. There's a lot of interpersonal growth. There's a lot of emotional weight in the title. Sometimes I just wish John Kent would like punch his problems in the face, but that would kind of run counter to what they've established as what he is, you know? So all that to say, the series is good. Um, and if you read Nightwing and then you also read Son of Kal-El, you kind of get a broader picture as to what Tom Taylor's doing. I think it's interesting that Tom Taylor is in charge of a legacy character in Gotham or in the Bat family and also in the Superman family, like these two huge pillars of the DC universe. And they interact with each other in a lot of different ways. Their families interact with each other in a lot of different ways. And he's using both of these books to sort of build this world where we understand who the heroes of the past were. And we're getting a better understanding of how their children, for lack of better terms, for Nightwing, are kind of picking up that baton that they've left and extending it further, right? Like the one thing I've said consistently about Tom Taylor's Nightwing is that Dick Grayson is a very much more emotionally mature version of Batman. And there's a lot of like little nods to that. Like I can't remember what it was. That's what it was like. Basically, Superman came to help Nightwing. John Kent came to help Nightwing with something and was like, "Hey, sorry to butt in." And Nightwing was like, "Oh, I'm secure in myself enough to accept help." Right? So it's like this book all the time is reminding you that because of what's come before, because of the heroes that have come in the past, right? This next generation is well equipped to take things further. And so I think because I'm a dad, it resonates with me in that way. But I do think that it's a fair criticism that there's not a ton of action in either of these books. I think Nightwing is a little bit better as far as the action because it feels more suspenseful, whereas Son of Kal-El at times feels a lot more melodramatic, if that's what you want to say. So anyway, I caught up on Son of Kal-El. Didn't expect to give a full series retrospective, but here we are. All in all, I'm probably rating Son of Kal-El 7 out of 10, where Nightwing gets like a strong 8.5 to 9, depending on the issue. Ricardo says, I wish they would keep Son of Kal-El. I'm fine with a Superman John Kent team up book. Like the reason I jumped on this era of Superman, like starting in Infinite Frontier, was because it was supposed to be Superman and John Kent for a little while, and then they would kind of branch off, and I assumed they would come back together. I like the idea of, father and son kind of patrolling the galaxy together. It was really cool. So I hope we get back to some of those threads that we got in Philip Kennedy Johnson's very early Action Comics run. Let's see. Nerdette really enjoyed issue number 16 also, which came out yesterday. She loves Son of Kal-El. And don't sleep on Batman versus Robin. Yeah, Batman versus Robin number 2 came out this week. I loved issue 1. I have issue 2 here in this stack. I just haven't gotten to it yet. Steven wants to know how many covers I think Static Season 2 will have. They're doing 3 covers, a 1 in 25, and a 1 in 50. So 5, if I remember correctly. So yeah. And the 1 in 25 and 1 in 50 are maybe it's 1 in 25 and 1 in 100. But either way, those 2 covers are foil variants of the B and C covers, one of which is by Olivier Coipel. And I'm definitely going to try to get the foil version of that one. So I'm glad they pushed it back to February so I can keep saving my money. Steven says, Tom Taylor books and your streams have that in common. I love it here. I appreciate it, man. How do you obtain? Get in good with your LCS. The A, B, and C covers are going to be open order, so you can pre-order those on websites like Things from Another World right now because they've already been solicited. And then for the ratio variants, those are typically first come, first serve at your LCS, unless you want to pay those aftermarket prices on eBay, which, you're welcome to do so. I know for me, I have cover A, B, and C, on my pull list, and I'm just going to have to make sure I get to the shop early that Tuesday so I get my books. So yeah, that's how you would obtain those. So the other book that I wanted to talk about was Wakanda #1. So Wakanda, I read the last 2 issues of Black Panther because I was behind. So I read issues 9 and 10. Issue 10 came out this week. And then I read this. Basically, all you need to know before you read this is that T'Challa is basically like no longer welcome in Wakanda for reasons you'll have to read in the John Ridley Black Panther run. And this series is all about how Wakanda is sort of or coping. I almost said quoting. How Wakanda is coping with that. Who are the supporting cast, basically. So each issue of this is a one-shot story featuring a different member of the sort of Wakandan supporting cast. This one, of course, focuses on Shuri. We're gonna have issues featuring who are we getting these? Tosin, the Queen Mother, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, and I forgot the rest. It's in this book, so there's that. But so you got Wakanda #1 featuring Shuri, and you have that's the A story is these one shots focusing on specific characters. Okoye is one of them as well. And then there's a B story that's threaded through all 6 issues. That is the history of the Black Panthers. And that was to me kind of the draw for the series as a whole. But I was really excited about issue 1 because Stephanie Williams is writing it or wrote it. So Wakanda #1 featuring an A story by Stephanie Williams with art by Paco Medina, who coincidentally also did art on that book that shall not be named, featuring Miles Morales that time. It was good art, just bad writing. But anyway, I'm pulling up Wakanda #1 on my tablet so I can tell you what some of my favorite parts were. But basically, T'Challa is very recently exiled from Wakanda, and this issue gives you sort of like a one-shot story of Shuri kind of doing what she does best. We find her in a lab, sort of examining some things. She's trying to replicate some technology that has been naturally occurring in Wakanda under her nose, and she's trying to find a way to replicate that through science. And we end up with like a mother-daughter story, really heartfelt moments between Shuri and the Queen Mother, and then a previously unknown threat that we may know from some other books jumps into Wakanda, and Shuri's got to save the day. So, without spoiling the plot of the book or spoiling the book at all, what I will say about this book is I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I did because I'm like, it's a Wakanda book without T'Challa, like, you know. But this was one of those examples of when representation is done well and sort of leads to a better product as a result, or a product that resonates with different people as a result. So Stephanie Williams, I met at Heroes Con. She's a wife, she's a mom. She's not that much older than me, if I remember correctly. As a matter of fact, I might be older than her. But anyway, uh, reading this book, you could tell it was written by a Black mom. It doesn't like sound like a grandmother or anything, but there are just these moments that kind of recall a shared experience, right? Like uh, there's a moment where the Shuri's mom is basically like accusing her of liking a dude, and like when she denies, she's like, like typical Black mom response. There's a point where like she forces Shuri to go get some food. Um, there's just a lot of stuff, and I posted on my Twitter page that there's a moment where Shuri does something heroic, and she's just within view of some little girl, and that girl says to her mom, like, "Yo, did you see that? She's so strong." So it was really cool, like just seeing um, a book written by a Black woman kind of for Black girls, right? Obviously, I'm not a Black girl, and I enjoyed the book. Um, but I sort of enjoyed that aspect of the book even more than the action. I think the threat that comes to Wakanda is like, hit or miss, but the book is well done. The dialogue is great. And yeah, so Wakanda #1, the A story by Stephanie Williams, I'd have to give it an 8 out of 10. It was a pretty good comic book. I enjoyed it a lot. And the art was really good. I really enjoyed the art by Paco Medina. And then the B story on this was the history of the Black Panthers. And so they basically just kind of started out with the first 2 Black Panthers. But you're not really just getting the history of the Black Panthers. You're kind of getting the history of Wakanda as a whole. But here's like one of the first Black Panthers. I really enjoyed the art in this as well because the art on the B story sort of looks older, like an homage to an older time. But this really kind of just breaks down how Wakanda came to be, what role vibranium had, how Wakanda society worked before vibranium, and what vibranium sort of introduced to the land. And at the same time, how the mantle of Black Panther sort of evolved and was created. So that was interesting as well. But the best part about this B story is that it's annotated. And I don't know, they didn't like announce that beforehand, but it's annotated and like every panel has something that harkens back to a Black Panther story in the past, going from Black Panther's origin in Fantastic Four 52 all the way up to like more recent introductions into Wakandan mythos in the Ta-Nehisi Coates run. And there's even things that happen in this issue that are happening for the first time. And so if you are a Black Panther fan, if you're trying to learn more about Wakanda as I am, this is actually a really good book to get. So a series that could have been a throwaway, like in the vein of the What If Miles Morales series, where it was just kind of multiversal, trying to tell one story, but a different writer on each book or each issue. This ends up being like a really well done project. And it kind of puts John Ridley in a role similar to Coates, where even though, you know, there's like a bunch of stuff going on that people don't necessarily like in the run, what he's doing is opening up a world for a bunch of other people to tell stories in this wheelhouse. So it was really dope. I enjoyed Wakanda #1. So the A story got an 8, and I'd say the B story probably gets an 8 as well. And it's really off the strength of the annotations. There's not a whole lot going on in the B story. It's just a history lesson. So yeah, that was an issue that I was surprised that I enjoyed as much as I did. So of course, those were the reviews of the week. And like I said, we got a lot going on tonight. We're going to talk about this DC Universe app update. But before we do, let me pull something up real quick. We have a guest tonight, and I want to read a little bit about our guest. And his name is Omari Malik. So, Omari was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia. And his story is one of both tragedy and triumph. He lost his father at 7 years old and turned to comic books because his father was a comic collector. So he turned to comic books and music as an outlet. When he was 17, he moved to New York to attend college. So he pulled a J. Cole. And he ended up getting a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and entered the corporate world as an insurance broker. But, you know, most people want to be creative, enjoy being creative, and Omari does as well. And so when he wasn't fulfilled in his job, he started this company, Blacktooth Publishing, where he is putting out original comic book stories. And so he's got a Kickstarter going right now, and we're going to talk all about it. But I'll let him sort of talk about himself. Please welcome to the stage, Mr. Omar Malik.
What's up, man? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. It's so funny that you say J. Cole because I went to St. John's.
Word.
Like, it's literally hilarious that you say Cole because I actually was a freshman at St. John's when 2014 Forest Hill Drives came out.
Mm-hmm.
Performed on campus, had everybody going crazy, which is
Nice.
insane because I was not a Cole fan until then. I grew up in Virginia, so I was a track fan. I was raised on Gucci and Waka, but that got me into conscious rap.
Word. That's funny. See, I'm from North Carolina. I still live in North Carolina. And I was in college. I was a senior. No, I was a sophomore in college when Drake and J. Cole kind of rose to prominence at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the story was, oh, he was from North Carolina. He moved to New York. And my brother was actually friends or roommates with one of J. Cole's like best friends.
Word.
So I kind of had like not a front row seat. I'd ever met the man or anything, but I was put onto his stuff early, so I became a fan pretty quickly. But I was an East Coast hip hop head anyway, so it worked out.
I grew up in Virginia. I was a trap fan, man. I like
Mm.
as if people can't tell, heavily influenced by hip hop from the jewelry to kind of the influence of like the way I write stories and kind of tell stories. So
Mhm.
it's funny that we also start talking about music and even our conversations beforehand and talking about sneakers and things like that.
Right, right, absolutely. Yo, Tayshawn is from Virginia. You're from Richmond,
Yeah, Richmond, Virginia.
and I think Tayshawn's from like the Norfolk area, Norfolk, Virginia Beach.
Shout out to the 757, man.
Word, word. Speaking of music, Tayshawn used to work for No Malice of the Clips,
Oh shit, yo. That's
so
dope.
that's cool stuff. But yeah, so I didn't know of Omari before he reached out for the interview, but Omari's got a really dope story, and he sent me a preview copy. Where did I put the book? I've been cleaning up in the office.
No worries. I have mine right here, man.
Okay. Mine is, oh, here it is. I put it on the other table. So he sent me a preview copy of this. This is Blacktooth Battalion. And this is the book that's being kickstarted right now. And it's basically a collection of 3 one-shot comics, right? And so the images that you were seeing on this overlay right here, these are the individual books. So there's at Adastra, is that how you say that?
Yeah, Dastra, Snake Bite, and Dogpile.
Word, word. So I was fortunate enough to be able to read Dogpile before we got on this stream. And I plan on reading one of these one-shot issues each week because we're going to be spotlighting this campaign all month until he gets to the goal. And Dogpile was really dope, right? Why don't you tell them what Dogpile's about?
I appreciate that, man. So I guess the long story of Dogpile is kind of inspired by an African folktale. And when
Mhm.
I say inspired, like long story, like the basis of the folktale is just a man had a bunch of animals that were kind of looking out for him. So I just kind of took that concept and just was like, that's cool. Like, what if a guy had animals that were kind of looking out for him and was kind of alone and I guess you could say it's kind of like a mystery, sort of like a revenge story, but just like a man that really didn't have a family, really didn't have anyone around him, and kind of found that within animals, kind of found that within dogs. And, you know, I tell people his powers are kind of like bruja, like magic, kind of voodoo and things like that. But most importantly, and like the story to me is going to be very mental, hopefully, I hope you kind of picked up on it. Like, a
Mhm.
lot of his biggest challenges are, him getting over his grief, him getting over his trauma, him learning to connect with people outside of the dogs, and even being able to really trust the dogs and kind of not be everywhere all at once and things like that.
Right, right. It's funny in the pitch for the book or for Dogpile, you basically say like, "Yo, if you're a fan of DMX, then you'll enjoy this book." And with that in mind, I read the book, and I couldn't get that out of my head, like because even as you're telling the story yourself, right? This kid who's like kind of grows up without family and kind of just become finds himself attached to dogs and can only relate to the dogs. Like that's the story of DMX, right?
Yeah, so I definitely a big X influence, and I actually saw. So as you mentioned, I lost my father when I was 7, so there's a little bit of that element within it, like with me latching on the comic books and Quan kind of latching on the dogs because comic books were one of the last things I kind of got from my dad. It was like literally he died, and obviously everybody's going through stuff and trying to figure things out. And it's like the one thing that people kind of didn't want or nobody was kind of looking for was all the long boxes. So those
Mhm.
are just for me, and you know, wanting to be close to my dad and hearing people talk about him being into that stuff, I ate it up. I was digging through those long boxes every day, looking at the covers like all over the place. So that mixed in with another memory from my father is when I was 5 years old, my dad took me to see DMX live. Like DMX did like a free show in Richmond, and I went. It was literally right around the time up in here came out. Still had the VHS cassette that he recorded. Like, so
Mhm.
I'm a big X fan, and I actually was working on a book before X passed, but it was just like kind of wanting that element to be with Quan because, from watching X interviews and just, thinking about myself as a person, that deals with grief or deals with trauma, or anybody that's went through something, they're kind of soft spoken.
Hmm.
To other people, they might seem big and kind of over the top, and even with some of his dogs being big and domineering, but it's like at the end of the day, a lot of people that have that demeanor are kind of soft, kind of within themselves, aren't as trustworthy, but have a lot going on and a lot of love to give.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. So Dogpile follows the story of Quan, who we don't well, I don't want to spoil anything, but basically Quan clearly comes from a troubled past of some sort. And we find the story opens up with him kind of coming back to his hometown with his dogs, and for whatever reason he's on a mission to like do right by the world. And so there's a couple different situations where Quan could just be like a passerby or like an observer and decides to kind of throw himself into the middle of some action to defend people who can't necessarily defend themselves. Um, and I loved the ending, right? I loved the situation that he throws himself toward the end of the book. But there's also a moment at the beginning of the book, like this initial confrontation, that I just found really uh funny in a lot of ways, right? And so without spoiling like the whole thing, my man is in the park with his dogs, and somebody's like, "Hey, can I buy your dog for my little girl?" And I'll let you guys guess how that confrontation ended up. But that was one of my favorite parts of the book as well. It was just, it kind of came out of nowhere, but it was just like the audacity of some people.
So I'm glad you got it, and that was one of the things that I've. So we're both comic fans, and one of the
Mhm,
things that I've tried to identify is like not to say I'm trying to write black books and being like this is a book that only black people can relate to, but
mhm,
something that I've kind of noticed about books, even though they have black protagonists and things like that, like I've never really seen situations that I couldn't explain. Like I told, like you mentioned, I was in corporate America, and when all the George Floyd stuff was going on, obviously there were a bunch of healing zooms and talk about your issues, we're trying to hear you, we're trying to understand and things like that, but it was really difficult for me to kind of articulate a lot of those situations to people that wouldn't see them. And then when I looked up thought about books that I read, I was like, I've never, like, you hear things and and see them like, well, you don't really get it, or characters lashing out and things like that, but it's not a moment that like you kind of wouldn't understand unless you look like us. And
right.
that's kind of really what I wanted to get across without being preachy, without it being, too up in your face, or without it being too much. But it's one of those things where, being, I just turned 26, and when you live this long, after a while, you kind of become numb to them, which is why it doesn't completely ruin his day.
Hmm.
And it almost doesn't feel like something that he hasn't heard or seen before. Like it's just a moment where it's like, this again, you know?
Right. Right. So yeah, it was funny because you're right, right? Like and part of my comics journey had been like I didn't start reading comics till 2019. Like I had been around comics. Like my grandmother used to live in New York, so I'd go there for the summers and we'd get comics then. But even then, I was like most interested in them for the pictures. But when I sort of rediscovered comics a few years back, one of the things that really got me deep into it was Milestone. And you're right in that most comics featuring people of color don't necessarily dive into what I would call black issues, right? Like even a couple years ago when there was that whole thing with the dude in Central Park watching the birds and whatever, they did this whole issue of it was called DC Represent, and basically the dude has like this is terrible. But the dude has like these like racism binoculars. He starts looking in through the binoculars and seeing injustice, and it's just like it was terrible. But it was like it had to be a special event. They had to make like a special anthology book to like point out, hey, like racism happens sometimes.
Yeah.
It
Like
was weird.
that's what I mean when it's like when you go through it so much, you kind of become numb to it, and then it's like not to I guess the area that Quan kind of lives in, and to give people a little bit more backstory, is kind of like inspired by like Detroit and kind of urban cities,
Mhm.
that kind of total line between being a city and kind of suburban. Because I've lived in Chicago for a minute and things like that. So, or even being up here in New York, a lot of things happen, and you kind of get those microaggressions that
Mhm.
aren't as up in your face, but it's still something that's a uniquely black experience. And for other races that go through it, something that's only particular to people that look like you and feel like you.
Right. Right. And so it's like I don't and I think Tayshawn says it really well, right? Like I appreciate the sentiment, but it's a lot after a while, right? Like going through
Exactly. Is
the
in
sensitivity trainings, all that.
Yeah, so like I said, and well, just to give a little bit more background on like that corporate thing, like I guess that might have been one of the moments where I literally was like explaining to my team and things like that. People are sending Zoom messages like, "Oh my God, George Floyd!" Like, you guys are gonna get Juneteenth off and things like that. And I was like, one of the things that kind of hurts most coming into this office every day is everybody looking at me.
Mhm.
And they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, if I walked, I was like, I wear a do rag anytime. I brush my hair. I have waves. I wear a do rag a lot. If I
Mhm.
walk in the office with my do rag and street clothes on, I look like a threat. When I walk in the office with my suit on, I also look like a threat. It's like, everybody else can, do whatever they want, kind of curse a little bit more than other people, but it's like everybody always kind of looks like me. And it's
Mhm.
like, if there was anything that I would want out of this situation, it's like, just want to chill, man. I just want to let my hair down and just be able to exist,
Right.
without being black XYZ or black, the black insurance broker or the black guy on Wall Street. It's just like, no, just a guy, you
Right.
know, because
Yeah.
when I'm back home in Brooklyn, I'm just a guy. Like,
Word. Yeah, nah, it's interesting. Because I mean I got promoted here recently and I'm like in a pseudo management position. And I constantly find myself like checking my tone because people always like assume that I'm saying something bad about them. If I'm like, hey, this process is inefficient, or why would we do that versus this? Like it always comes across the wrong way to people.
that was that same corporate friction. I'm a thinker, and
Hmm.
part of the reason why I got into comics was I was just thinking of like, oh, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of Supermans and others and non-Superman Supermans and Batmans that aren't Batmans, and always thinking like when I've been working in jobs and it's like, all right, so why are we doing this? Why?
Hmm.
Like, oh, okay, they told us to do it, but like we could do it sooner. Like, why don't we do an Excel pivot instead of like doing this by hand? And it's
Hmm.
like when I would ask questions, it's like, why are you asking this question? Like it feels aggressive that I'm asking this question, or like asserting that things can maybe be done easier and things
Hmm.
like that. So
Yeah, his work. My man Fourth Wall or Danny's here. Danny is also an independent comics creator. Danny, funny, I'm wearing his hat. Danny's the co-creator of Ace Blade.
oh
Um,
word, yeah, I've definitely heard of that.
where yeah, Danny likes to travel to cons, so y'all might have seen each other at a time or two. Although Danny like hates big cons for some reason.
No, I
But
get it, man. And New York Comic Con was a whirlwind. So like
mhm,
for people that are going to click on my Kickstarter now, I did a bunch of networking. So a whirlwind in a sense, ran into Todd McFarlane, ran into Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, and all types of people. But it was one of those things where I was literally exhausted after being there all 4 days.
right, right. Yeah, no, I saw the pictures, man. He man, Omari made the most of New York Comic Con. He's got photos with DMC, not Jim Lee, but Scott Snyder, Greg
Yeah.
Capullo, so many
And,
people.
and the DL, bumped into everybody. Was trying to, I was telling people, being a politician, shaking hands, kissing babies.
Right, right. Um, so we talked about Daquan's backstory and we dove a little bit into your backstory. Pardon me for being a terrible interviewer,
This is
but
all good.
I do want to know more about like sort of what led you to be like, all right, let me write comics, and I want to know more about like what stories you wanted to tell through Blacktooth.
I tell people Blacktooth is 2 years 2 years and like a lifetime in the making. And I say a lifetime because I've always been into comics. Like I said, the real love probably started really around my when my dad passed, as far as like picking up books and versus just ignoring those long white boxes. But
Mhm.
I was that kid that was had the Batman pajamas, like I was a marketing person's dream, because if you
Mhm.
put on a TV show and you had a toy attached to it, I was into it. Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Beyblade, Static Shock,
Mhm.
Lunatics Unleashed, just everything. Like I ate that stuff up. But I've always kind of, maybe I'm insecure, just not as confident, but I've always never been able to do what is done, if that makes sense. Like I play guitar, but I never wanted to learn other people's songs. Like I always wanted
Mhm.
to play my own stuff.
Mhm.
Like I wanted to draw, but I never necessarily, like, I was like, oh shit, my stuff doesn't look like Jim Lee. Like I don't look as
Mhm.
great as everybody else. So
Right.
nobody can tell me I'm drawing my stuff wrong. So let me just focus on trying to draw what I want to draw. And that
Word.
kind of came about as far as writing, because when I did graduate with my bachelor's, I had a bit of like a crisis, because it was like, oh my God, I'm about to start working. Do I really want to work? Like, do I really want to do
Mhm.
this? Like, is this really what I want? Is this about to be my life until I'm like 65? Like, to go into this office every day?
Mhm.
And like I really sat down and was like, all right, so what do I like to do? Like, what am I passionate about? And the thing that came up was comics. And it was like, 'cause when I was in middle school and high school, like I have sketch pads of stuff that, were ideas that I was developing. Like Snakebite, ironically, is one of those ideas from like '09. I have like an index card that's technically the first crumb of the idea,
Mhm.
but at the time the protagonist was the villain. He would have been the villain of the story. So,
Got you.
I went back home to my mother's house and kind of dug through all that stuff and was trying to get it together as I was about to start my job, and I started making money, so I got distracted.
Mhm.
Well, maybe this isn't too bad. Like,
Right.
was enjoying doing the corporate thing and stuff like that. But it was always in the back of my mind. So always like watching TV and being like, well, no, they should have done this, or it would have been better if this, like, what if this happened? Or like, I wouldn't have wrote it that way. Like
Mhm.
telling friends, like, I'm sure anybody that's in the comics, like when you have friends that are casual fans, you're like, well, actually in the comics, this happened. So if I was this director, I would have done this, or they should have brought up
Mhm.
that obscure issue that no one else read but you, and you wish they would adapt it, and things like that. So kind of always keeping, random sheets of paper or notes in my phone about different ideas. But when the pandemic hit, and that's when I really got fed up with work, and it was like, all right, I have money now. I have a decent amount that I can be able to get something going. So let me sit down. Let me write.
Mhm.
I bought all the kind of how to write comic books that you can get. And I reached out to my mentor. Shout outs to him. His name's Greg Anderson, LSA. He has an indie book called It's Nana, which is about Anansi. And
Mhm.
I actually met him at a con, and I had his card, and I was like, all right, so I'm reading these books, but I don't know how to do this. Like, I need a mentor. I
Mhm.
reached out to him. He kind of started coaching me, putting me on game, and kind of started introducing me to the way things are done and how to get things done. And I took it from there, put my book together, and since then it's kind of been off to the races as far as like trying to get stuff out. Trying to do cons to promote the book before I launch my Kickstarter. Kind of doing collaborations because I have a friend that owns a streetwear brand, so I did a comic for him before this, and
Mhm.
just trying to get the wheels turning and get out there.
Dope. Dope. Um, it's funny. I've seen It's Not the Were Spider. I haven't read it yet. Um, there's a couple of guys where I live. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina,
Mhm.
and they started an online shop, and they pretty much specialize in indie books by Black creators. So it's Nana, Harriet Tubman, Demon Slayer.
Shout out to my
Stuff like
man. He was at New York Comic Con. Like, I love those guys.
Yeah, man. So this book would be right up that alley, right? So we talked about Dogpile a little bit. I do want to talk about your other characters as well. So I guess we can start off with or continue with Adastra. Like, tell the people what Adastra's all about.
So I have a younger sister. And my younger sister, she hated cartoons, but
Hmm.
she's like big into like Disney Channel and like Teen Nick and like Degrassi sort of stuff. So you're kind of fighting over the living room TV. So I was always watching that stuff, and that book is like really inspired by that. Like I like that stuff. Like I couldn't help but like it after seeing so many episodes of That's So Raven and Hannah
Uh,
Montana. After
uh-huh.
I liked it, and I wanted to tell a story. And obviously, having several girlfriends and having a girlfriend that in particular was like into comics and anime and stuff like that. So I really wanted to write something because I had a bunch of ideas for stuff like that. So Adastra, to me, it's a story about perseverance. So, as people read the pitch, it's about a girl who literally, can be anything she wants. Like she takes the concept of you being a teenager and hearing that, when you grow up, you can do anything and be anything you want. But she literally can do it. So it's, all the stresses that come with that while trying to manage a regular life and, kind of being a popular kid, being a middle child and kind of being into everything and, having all those choices and things like that.
Got you. Got you. So I'm just scrolling through. Here's some of the pages from Adastra right here. Now, who's the artist on Adastra?
So my man, so shout outs to him. I love him to death. It's my guy Ronaldo, and super awesome dude. We actually, like I said, we did another comic together for one of my friend's brands. My friend has a streetwear brand called Barriers New York, and he did a sneaker for Converse. So me and Ronaldo put together a comic for that, and super nice guy, awesome to work with. Dynamite art. Like literally, like had the perfect feel because I wanted it to kind of feel like a Saturday morning cartoon as far as the
Yeah.
art style, and
Mhm.
be very welcoming, be girly but not too girly, so something that just everybody could gravitate to.
Dope, dope. Yeah, no, the art for Adastra caught my eye first. Because I love that cartoony stuff. Like I read so many comics right now, and so much of what's coming out of the big two is like, let's see who can create the darkest story featuring these superheroes. And so when you see something like Adastra, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh snap, I want to read that. Like, let me read that real quick to kind of cleanse the palate and get a refresh. So I love stuff like that. Just want to give a shout out. My man Danny did back the campaign. Says good luck, brother Omari.
I
He'll be
appreciate
following.
it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank everybody that's back in the campaign. We're at, I think, just over 2 bands so far. So, the goal is 5. So
Nice. So the stories are already done because you've created these in one shot form, and I've seen photos of image. Could you or images of you guys with the books? But could you tell the audience like what this campaign is going towards, like what them backing you is going to help you accomplish through these books?
So that's one thing that, being a fan first and supporting a bunch of Kickstarters, one thing that I wanted to do, and, obviously, kind of using my degrees and business knowledge is I wanted to put out a product that, people would kind of get immediately because I hate waiting and Amazon has spoiled me. So,
Right.
I spend my money on something I kind of want it as soon as possible. So it was important for me to kind of make sure that the book was ready
Hmm.
and that, once people back it, they'd be able to get their copies and, putting a little bit of a cushion in there because each story is basically a pilot. So it's
Hmm.
basically a pilot. They're all one shots that give you a look into the world of the characters and what you can feel as far as like their full series. So I wanted to give people a nice serving size to introduce them to the characters, get a feel of what they're going through and kind of who they are. So the campaign is going to go, all the money from the campaign is going to go towards printing and putting out all the books that, people backed. And then any extra and like kind of the, little wiggle room and stuff is going to go towards funding the full series of all the books. So obviously I want to take them to full series and I'm going to start from like day one, kind of before everybody gets their powers to kind
Okay.
of explain how things are going and explain how we got to the point where eventually there will be a volume where it's like a dash of, I don't know, 6 through 30. And it's
Hmm.
like, here's where the one shot fits in and like, here's where this fits in. And, some things I kind of wanted to leave some Easter eggs in for the early fans that when they read this book they'll hear this name and it's like, oh, that's that character that was mentioned here and like, oh, that came up again and things like that.
Got you. That's dope. Now, the Blacktooth publishing universe, right? Is this all interconnected? Do these characters cross over with each other? Are these pretty much independent stories?
So I'll say it's independent, and I'll say it's independent for now. Is I don't want to do anything forced. Being a big fan and whether it's movies or TV or comics, it's like everything's a shared universe. Everything's rely on everything and everything matters. It's like I want to tell good stories first and foremost.
Right.
It's like I'm not gonna force Daquan to interact with Adastra. I'm not gonna force O from Snakebite to interact with Daquan. If things organically happen, and I think of a story where they'll anybody will be good connecting with each other, then it'll happen. If not, it's whatever. For me, the anthology version kind of harkens back to what comics originally were, in the sense of like
Mhm.
you think about Detective Comics, like Batman was just a story within Detective Comics that had nothing to do with the other comics in Detective Comics. Same thing with like Amazing Fantasy, and
Mhm.
a Spider-Man story, and then a bunch of other stuff with Tales of Suspense, or even more modern stuff like the old Shonen Jump magazines. Like you have
Mhm.
Bleach, Naruto, just happen to be packaged together, but separately they were their own thing. So if it
Right.
happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. If a bunch of people scream at me and yell at me to tell me to do it, then it happens sooner than later. But for now, just good stories that are kind of in their own place.
Got you. So, if you guys are just tuning in, I'm here with Omari Malik, who's the founder of Blacktooth Publishing, and he's currently raising money in a Kickstarter for a book called Blacktooth Battalion, which is basically a trade paperback collecting three one-shot issues that he's already completed, featuring three original characters. So we have Adastra, we have a Dogpile, and then this last one that we haven't talked about yet is Snakebite. Can you tell the people what Snakebite's all about?
Yeah, so Snakebite, I loved hood movies. Like I'm like I've seen everything. Juice, Boys in the Hood, Jason Lyric, all those types of movies. So that's kind of influenced by that, and partially like, things that I see going on outside in Brooklyn, with like a lot of the, New York drill music, and as far as like what's happening and things like that. So it's really about a kid, he's fresh out of juvenile detention. He's trying to change. He's obviously did things to lead him there, but he gets those him and his friends, they get a bunch of tattoos, and they think they're really cool, and they think they're just. And he's using it as more so like, all right, so I'm gonna get these tattoos with my friends. This will kind of be my last shebang as far as like doing things badly and kind of living that old life, and I'm gonna
Mhm.
change. But little does he know that those tattoos are gonna give him superpowers. So now his tattoos are giving him superpowers, but he still kind of has that pull of his friends trying to lead him down the wrong path, trying to bring him into the streets. And it's like now he has a little bit more power than he did before, but it's like also he's still on probation. Is he going to be better, or is he going to continue to do those same things? So
Word.
for me, it's almost like I relate it to like that scene in Boys in the Hood where Trey has to decide to get out the car,
Mhm.
or Juice when it's like Q really didn't want to go do the robbery after he won his DJ competition. So a coming of age story, a hood classic. Like if
Right.
there was ever a hood movie where it was like menace to society, but like they gave him superpowers, that to me is what Snakebite is.
That is great because I grew up on every hood movie ever that I probably shouldn't have been watching at that age.
Hey man,
So that works for me. I was like the kid that just got home and watched BET and like watched the terribly uh edited versions of these movies where they just throw random words into people's mouths. Like it's just great. But yeah, so Snakebite sounds dope just for that aspect alone. But you're right. I could see because you were saying like this, the idea for Snakebite kind of started with him being the antagonist, and like the snakes wrapped around him definitely does look like a villainous sort of look. So I'm definitely curious to see how this one goes. I might read that before I read Adastra.
yeah,
But
like I said, man, I definitely want to hear the feedback from everybody. DM me on Instagram, comment on the Kickstarter page, tell me what you think, as far as, the pitches, or for all the people that I've been selling to at cons. I've gotten a bunch of great feedback so far. So, if people back and then you get your book and you love it, I want to know.
word, who's this on art?
So on art, it's a guy named Moy R, and he has a colorist, kind of his personal colorist. So really nice guy. He's done some stuff for Marvel. So I wanted this one to have kind of the most traditional comic book style art.
Mhm.
So, like with Dogpile, it's kind of drawn like a manga. Like I
Mhm.
said, Adastra kind of has the cartoony feel, but this one I kind of wanted it to have the most traditional kind of comic book art style.
Got you. And how would you say, like, and I like to ask this question because I feel like every indie creator has a different approach, but how is it like when you conceptualize these characters, but you have to rely on a different artist to sort of bring it to life? How is that collaboration process for you?
For me, I feel like I'm a little bit too anal. So it's like I've been told by my artists and then like different people in the industry and by my mentors that I brought a lot to the table as far as like having things together. You know,
Mhm,
being that I'm into fashion, you know, being in New York and kind of being into the streetwear scene. So it's like I was putting together looks. So it's
mhm,
like as I was reaching out to my artists, you know, to before I even started, you know, doing the interiors, just getting turnarounds of characters done, I was sending things to artists like, all right, so here's a t-shirt reference. Like I want the shirt to look like this. I want the sleeves to kind of be rolled up a little bit. Like I want it to look like he has on compression pants. Like
mhm,
here are some colors. Like here's a zip file containing a color
mhm.
wheel of the colors I want you to use. Here's some references for pictures of like what I want the environment to look like and things like that. So you know, I didn't really. I felt like my advice that I would give to anybody is kind of overindulge and say more than you need to say. That way, you're not going back and forth. So it wasn't ever a point where you know I felt like an artist wasn't really kind of getting me or didn't know what I was saying because I was sending so many reference photos of like what I wanted and like, all right, so I want the hair to look like this, like I want this to look like this, and things like that.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense, right? For me, like I wouldn't consider myself an artist, but if I was going to write a story, I would absolutely try to design the characters myself and then be like, all right, here's all these aspects that I want you to work with and don't go out of these borders. But, that's not how art works. You got to give some
So
freedom.
yeah, I mean, so that was the thing. Like, you know, also giving artists like free reign as far as like once I kind of got down how I wanted the characters to look, you know, also giving artists like leeway as far as like, hey, so it's like when I was writing panels, it's like, all right, so I want this to happen. But it's like, if you think you can tell it in less panels or more panels, you know, send me a sketch and we'll discuss it from there. Like,
Hmm.
not wanting to stifle anybody's creativity because at the end of the day, you are partners. So you
Hmm.
want them to have that personal investment in the book. While, you know, like there have been plenty of moments where artists have sent me pages and I'm like, all right, like actually, I'm gonna rewrite the script because you made it look way better because I had this for 7 panels, but you said we only need 5, and you're
Right.
right. So let me cut out those 2 lines of dialogue that kind of don't matter and don't necessarily need to be there.
Hmm. Word. Word. So, my man Danny's getting at me, right? So, uh, we've had this conversation on the show plenty of times, but I don't like The Wiz. Like, it doesn't do it for
Is
me.
it a musical or?
It's not because it's a well, I don't really particularly like musicals.
That's why I asked. A lot of people, ironically, like I said, my sister doesn't like cartoons. She's also a person that hates musicals.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of musicals. Like, if you can speak the dialogue, then don't give me a 5-minute song. But
That's the thing, man. If you know like musical theater, when the
mhm,
emotion is too great to talk, you sing. When it's too great to sing, you dance.
if that's one way to handle your problems, you know what I'm saying? Like, it worked for the dudes in the Beat It video. Like, it's cool.
So you've never seen Carmen, a hip hop opera.
I watched it once. I didn't like that one either. I, I didn't like Beyonce and Mekhi Phifer, but Beyonce's acting wasn't great back then. Well, it's still not great. So maybe that's why. I don't know. I'll try to revisit some of these things like I revisited The Wiz, but my issue with The Wiz is like decidedly for the stage, and it just doesn't translate, in my opinion, as well on screen. Like, I think The Wiz works great as a Broadway play, and I think it kind of should have stayed there. But it also was an issue of casting for the time. Like, it was just like a collection of stars that maybe weren't the greatest for their roles. Dorothy, in particular, I have a laundry list of issues with The Wiz, but Danny is like, oh, you can't like Menace to Society and The Wiz, I guess. Which you
I
can like
only give him credence because like I didn't notice this until I had like an ex girlfriend point this out to me. But Kane's grandparents are in a completely different movie.
word.
Rewatch Menace to Society and pay attention to the scenes when Kane is talking to his grandparents, and it's like, what are they doing? Why are they acting like this? Like it feels so like cardboarded and like they're in a one shot play. Like
Mm.
it's
Uh,
insane. if you rewatch it, just pay attention to their scenes, and you'll be like, "What are they doing? They're not in this movie."
I'll have to check it out, man. I'll have to check it out. Ilika says BJ the Beehive's gonna get you. Look, man, Beyonce is a very talented artist. Coffee Top Gun says he nearly missed the hangout. Look, guys, so we don't have a ton of time left on the interview, but I really wanted to make sure you guys got to see everything that this campaign has to offer. So, like I said, the Blacktooth Battalion is a collection of 3 already written stories: Snakebite, Adastra, and Dogpile. And so, as far as backing the campaign, you can back for as little as $10 and get a digital copy of everything that we just talked about tonight. And to get the one-shot book, all you have to pledge is 15.
Yeah, so just to tell people, like, one, you can buy the combined anthology version, or you can get the single issues that are just 15 for the physicals, and can't remember the prices off the top of my head. But if one pitch stands out to you versus the others, and you just want to rock with that one, by all means, I appreciate any support. Or you can take the gamble and get all 3. So I wanted to be flexible with people, because I was definitely, as much as I love Shonen Jump, there were a couple stinkers in there that I didn't necessarily always want. So people just want one, just want 2. I wanted to be flexible.
Word. I might have to back at the level to get this t-shirt.
Yeah, go for it, man. Yeah.
Because I have the trade. I don't have the single issues, but that t-shirt is dope. But I mean, you can back for as much as $150 and get a Kickstarter exclusive, which I believe is this one here on the bottom right.
Yep.
Okay, that's a dope cover. So yeah, you can back for as much as $150, get the ultimate bundle. You get volume 1 with the Kickstarter exclusive. You get digital and physical copies of the one-shots and a t-shirt, plus a special gift that I assume we don't want to spoil tonight on the interview.
Not yet. But
Okay.
These are all the people that I've given a book out to, from my man's ASAP Ill, Shane Oliver, Hood by Air, Scott Snyder,
Dope.
Greg Capullos, Kirk Knight, Kirk Neasy on the beat,
Word.
DMC, another St. John's of Love.
I was about to say DMC in the place to be. Go to St. John's University.
My man Desto Dove.
Word.
Frank Miller the God.
That is crazy.
My man Q. Yeah, I have a very funny theory that Use, Love and Basketball, and Higher Learning are all the same movie.
In the same universe.
They're all the same movie. He's named Q in 2 of those movies, man.
That is funny. I didn't even think about that, but he is Q in 2 of those. That is great.
Todd.
That is dope.
Dr. Lee.
Yo, Static Shock.
Yeah, Phil Lamar.
And the Green Lantern.
Chuck
D. That's crazy.
King Vader. So, like I said, the books, for people that I know, a lot of people tend to be like skeptical of Kickstarters, but the book is out there. Like, I've been I've been selling, I've been wheeling and dealing. Like, people got this. This isn't one of those campaigns where it's like in 6 months you're like, all right, where's my book? Like, once the campaign's done, shortly after, books are going to be sent out. Like, I'm on top of everything. I'm doing Baltimore Comic-Con for Halloween weekend, and then I'll be in Virginia in November just after the campaign is done, doing Richmond Comic-Con, VA Comic-Con. So
nice. Yo, Ice-T is in this photo gallery.
Yeah, Ice-T too, man. Super nice guy.
Super dope. So the goal for this campaign is $5,000. We're just under halfway there, and the campaign ends next month. Looks like about the 15th of November or so. So yeah, guys, definitely back the campaign if you feel so led after watching this interview and getting to know the characters a little bit. Like I said, I've read Dogpile and I really enjoyed it. So over the next couple of weeks, you guys are going to hear me review the other 2 one-shots in this series, and we'll keep it like that. But the art is great. The story is great. And Omari's trying to do something different. Like, I think it's all about being true to yourself as an artist. And I think, like, no matter what your experience in life is, like, there are people that can relate. So there are things in these books that I immediately relate to just because, I'm a black kid from North Carolina who grew up on hood movies, right? And so there may be some things that you relate to as well. So I encourage you to check out the campaign. And like I said, you can back at any level. You can back for as little as $10 and get digital access to all the stories. So there's really no excuse. Use the link. It's bjkicks.link/blacktooth. It'll be in the description of all the videos I do this month. And yeah, man. Was there anything else you wanted to say to the people before we end?
Man, just I appreciate the support. Please check it out. Show some love, show some support. If you go to my website, I have the Cash App too, and PayPal. Or if you don't want to buy the books, but you just want to help a brother out, you can do that too. And
Word.
shout out to BJ for having me on, man. We got to get on the other channel and do a sneaker battle, man.
Oh, we can do that. We can do that. Yeah. We can do. It's funny. I started the sneaker channel just because one of my homeboys was like, he had a pair of Yeezys on once, and I was like, "Yo, where'd you get those?" He's like, "Oh, now I buy UAs." I was like, "What the heck is a UA?"
Oh my
And it
god.
started down this whole rabbit hole. So he's like, "Well, yeah, if you got a YouTube channel, they'll just send you stuff." So it started with me. I was like, "All right, I might just do a couple videos on my comic channel and just kind of get a couple of sneakers." What I did not realize is how thirsty these sellers are for attention. So like all this behind me has been in the last like month and a half, just been like, hey, can you review our shoes? So I don't go anywhere. I go to church, the comic shop, and the grocery store. So it's like the chances of somebody calling out my fake sneakers are slim to none. Plus, I'm usually wearing slides anyway.
Listen, that's me. I have a bunch of sneakers, but my most worn pair is a pair of dirty low top Chucks.
Right,
Just bought Panda Babes, but it's like I've been wearing the dirty low top Chucks every day.
right. So it's just how it goes. But look, man, if you want to stick around, you absolutely can. We're going to talk about the DC Universe Infinite app and how they just leveled up their subscription and it's going to kill comic shops forever. It's not killing comic shops, but that's what people like to believe. So yeah, I mean, if you want to stick around, that's totally cool. I'm down.
For sure, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. Shout outs to everybody. Make sure y'all are subscribing and following BJ. Follow me. Check me out. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yo, no problem, man. Thanks again for stopping by, man.
You're the best, man.
Appreciate it, man. Peace.
Peace.
All right. So again, a really dope campaign. You guys gotta back the Blacktooth Battalion. I'm not blowing smoke. You guys know I like to support indie creators anyway. Like I like supporting Kickstarters because it's books like this that you're not gonna find at a comic shop. So definitely back the campaign. The link is in the chat and it'll be in the description in most of the videos I do this month. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But now it is time for tonight's topic. And tonight we're talking about the DC Universe Infinite app. And with DC Universe, basically they've had this subscription service for a few years now. I subscribed to DC Universe back when it was like an app where you could watch every DC TV show and every DC cartoon and all of that. And then HBO Max came into the picture, and all of a sudden the DC Universe app only had comics. And now they launched the Infinite. They called it DC Universe Infinite. And with that, they kind of opened up their library of comics, and they've been slowly adding things all along. And with DC Universe Infinite, they basically had been on a 6-month delay. So you could get all the comics you want, but anything that's come out in the last 6 months was not available to you. And just recently, DC Universe announced a new tier. And so let me pull up the announcement here. DC never puts news on the homepage, which is dumb. All right, so let's share this. All right, so DC Universe announces or introducing DC Universe Infinite Ultra. Terrible name, by the way. Like, First of all, like maybe they just shouldn't have called it DC Universe Infinite if it wasn't infinite, because now you're adding Ultra to like denote that you added things to infinite. But if it was infinite, it wouldn't need anything added to it because it's infinite. But basically, the biggest update to this Ultra tier is that your new comics are going to be available 1 month after they're released in comic shops. And the only way to subscribe to DC Universe Infinite Ultra is by paying an annual subscription. It is not a monthly subscription, it's an annual subscription. But if you subscribe before November 28th, then your annual rate is just $99. One thing I couldn't find is how much the subscription is going to be after November 28th. But for right now, it's $99.99 a year if you're in the United States, $119 in Canada, $135 in Australia or New Zealand, and 72 in the UK, British pounds. So, exchange rates and whatnot. And as long as you don't cancel that annual subscription, it stays at that price. So it's an introductory lifetime price, if that makes sense. So with that, again, there's a lot that I didn't know was going to be the blowback, or you could kind of predict it, honestly. I went to the comic shop on yesterday. Was yesterday Wednesday? Tuesday. I went to the comic shop. That's when it was. So I went to the comic shop Tuesday, and I'm talking to my man Dan and Trevor. And Dan told me straight up that basically he was already invited to join several protests against DC Comics. Now, retailers have been protesting DC Comics for a minute because during the pandemic, they dropped Diamond and went to Lunar and made it so that retailers had to open up several accounts and they weren't getting the same discounts because they weren't ordering at the same volume from Diamond and blah, blah, blah. And so there were some shops that refused to carry DC Comics then. And that was only like a year and a half ago. Well, now DC Comics is changing the release window from 6 months to 1 month, at least for the people who are willing to pay that $99 up front for the year. And now there's really no need, if you have patience, to go to the comic shop. You pay $100 a year, and what I will show you is that legit anything that you want to read from DC is here already. Like, let me stop sharing this one. I'm gonna share the other, share another tab. So, Dark Crisis, right? Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths is the name of the event. The Justice League died in Justice League 75, and I'm gonna show you what's available to Ultra members that's not available to anyone else. So they've got this in a nice little reading order here. You can see the roots of the Dark Crisis, so stuff that's introduced in the pages of Swamp Thing way back in the day by the original writer. And then we get some stuff from Infinite Frontier, Justice League Incarnate, and so on. And then you get the prelude to Dark Crisis, starting with the death of the Justice League number 75, which came out in April of 2022. We're in October. The death of the Justice League, all the way up through like everything in the Dark Crisis event, besides stuff that came out this month, you can read it in DC Universe Infinite if you have an Ultra membership. It's basically the last 6 months of comic releases. Now, if you didn't pay the extra $99, you don't get to read any of this yet. And as it stands, you won't get to read any of it until December, January at the earliest. By then, the whole universe will be reset. All the comics media will have spoiled what happened, and you'll be mad, right? So it's wild. It's wild to me just how much this changes the game. Because if you guys know me, you know that I suck at reading comics physically. And one of my biggest gripes with DC up until this point has been like they're not given the digital codes to go with the comics. And so I have to buy them physically if I want to read the stories. Well, I could buy them digitally, but digital comics cost the same as physical comics. So if I'm going to pay my money, I want a physical representation of the money that I paid. It's just how I feel about it. And it was so difficult because I have a kid, I have a 1-year-old who loves ripping paper. So me keeping this room full of single issues at baby eye level is just a hazard. It is a working hazard like you would never, ever believe. And so because of that, my DC comics get locked away in short boxes or drawers or anywhere that I can find to put them. And my Marvel books get read right away because I come home from the comic shop, I scan all my digital codes into the Marvel Comics app, and then boom, everything I want to read is right here in my iPad, ready to go. And I've been like wanting DC to do something to make digital comics more accessible forever. I think I still would have preferred the digital code, but $100 a year and all the books are there 30 days after they come out in the comic shop, that's fine with me. Just full transparency, I'm usually an issue behind anyway. So 30 days is the equivalent of one issue behind. I caught up on Superman, Son of Kal-El, all digitally since Monday because they didn't launch this until Monday. And I read all the issues that I was missing, basically the last 6 months of releases, just Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Wednesday, a new issue was out. And I went to the comic shop and I haven't read that issue yet. Not because I couldn't, but because I hadn't read this one yet. Hadn't read Action Comics 1047, which leads directly into Superman Son of Kal-El issue 16. So that's why I didn't read it. But the fact that I'm all the way caught up and all it took me was my iPad and I didn't have to go through this ridiculous stack of physical issues that's under my desk right now means the world. Dreamer's here. Dreamer from DC Comics. Dreamer was in the last issue of Superman Son of Kal-El, interestingly enough. So shout out to you, Dreamer. Blacktooth says, what's up? Thanks for being here, man. But yeah. So what I want to know is how you feel this is going to go over. Now, people talk about like these doomsday scenarios all the time. Like every innovation in the comic book world is going to somehow lead to the death of is going to somehow lead to the death of comic shops and the death of the industry as a whole. So I'm sure there are doomsday sayers who are like, now that you can read books 30 days after they release, why would anyone ever go to a comic shop? To which I say, because they wanted to buy Marvel comics or indie comics, or because they still wanted to collect DC comics. So just to give you an example of what happened to me, the first week that I could have just not bought DC comics, you know what I did? I bought them anyway, is what I did. And I almost bought multiple copies because the covers were dope. Covers were super dope. What's up, Kevin? Good to see you, sir. Good to see you. We had a pretty cool interview just take place. And now we're talking about this new update to DC Universe Infinite. Part Work says just saying hi before bed, won't make it next week on days, so different sleep pattern. Yo, well, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it, man. And get some rest, man. Get some rest. Marvel digital codes are something I'm late on, but game changing for me. I bag and board my books and just read on my iPad. Super convenient. Hope DC follows suit with that soon. Doubt it though. Yeah, that's how I feel. Like the ideal solution would be digital codes. Because like you said, I mean, like I said, I come straight to home, come home, grab the codes out of all my books, and then I can put my Marvel books in the short boxes where they belong. And, you know, with Marvel Unlimited is only 3 months behind. So I don't feel bad about not picking up certain Marvel titles. Like Moon Knight was really dope. But I found myself 2 issues behind. I was like, well, if I'm 2 issues behind, I might as well be 3 issues behind. Let's just go ahead and cut it from the title. or from the pull list. So I spend less weekly on Marvel books. But, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm still very much active in comics. The stuff that I don't spend on, I end up making up for it. Like, here's a perfect example. This week, I bought the 1 in 25 variant for Wakanda #1. This is the history of the Black Panthers variant. Now, I know it's not DC getting extra money, but this was $15. And you know why I bought this? Because I saw it behind the behind the cash register and I wanted it. It was an impulse buy if I've ever bought anything impulsively. And I buy things impulsively kind of often, at least weekly, right? Another thing that I bought that I didn't need to buy was this. This is the A cover to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, I'm subscribed to B covers, and Kevin Eastman does the B covers. But this time around, issue 133, the A cover, in my opinion, was better. So I bought both instead of buying one or the other. And when I don't have to buy every DC book to know what's going on in the DC universe, I have more money to do that with, right? I can still support my LCS by buying the things that I'm super interested in. And when I get home, I'm not overwhelmed by all the stuff I bought because I only bought stuff that I really loved. And I think that's dope. Willie Survive. It's a funny name. Willie says it'll just raise the price of physical books because there will be lower print runs, in my opinion. It could, but the prices were going up anyway. A lot of DC comics are like $5 and $6 anyway. And don't let it be some sort of anniversary special or a thick trade. Then it's $10 off rip. Not to mention the black label books and then the variant covers. They're already expensive. I don't know that they're going to get that much more expensive because there is a certain thing. It's like a minimum viable product and the maximum value that people are willing to spend on it. The comic shop is almost like the barbershop to me. It's not going anywhere. Exactly. That's how I feel. No matter what's available in comic shops or not in comic shops, I'm going to be at the comic shop every week because I have a relationship with the people there. I talk to Dan and Trevor, not as much as I talk to my wife, but certainly more than I talk to certain family members on a weekly basis. And that sort of weekly appointment with the people that like talking about the same things I like talking about is important to me. So I do it. Let's see. Kevin, what's up, man? Static Shock. I bought issue number 13. It's on the Kal-El. Biggest mistake of my life. I only bought it for Dreamer, so I'm a big fan of hers. But it would ruin my experience because it was the most boringest book I've read. Word. Is DC willing to make another character because I'm not making a pitch to DC? I don't know. I mean, typically they are. People pitch characters to DC all the time, I'm sure. But yeah, the issue of Superman Son of Kal-El was Dreamer in it. I just recently read it like 2 days ago. And I gave a full review of that earlier in the show. But I do agree that the Son of Kal-El book kind of lacks action and is a little bit more melodramatic than I'd like my comics to be. But it's still an interesting story. And now that we've got Superman and his son reunited in books, I'm excited to read the title again. By the way, this series is ending with issue 18 2 months from now. So hopefully it wraps up well. I've been enjoying Tom Taylor. I'm definitely going to pick up Tom Taylor's Adventures in Superman series when this wraps. Let's see. There's like something tickling my nose. All right. But yeah, Kevin, I'm doing well, man. I hope you are too. So, but yeah, I want to know how you guys feel. Like, let me just go to the Browse Comics book or tab and sort by newest. And let's see if they fix the okay, cool. So, for example, this is DC versus Vampires All Out War. But some recent comic series that you can read. I got caught up on this. I read Black Adam 1, 2, and 3 by Christopher Priest. Issue 4 just came out last week. I haven't quite read it yet. I read like half of it because it's physical and I had to put it away because my daughter was in the room. But this series is really dope. And the fact that I could get caught up on it just on my iPad was amazing. Let's see, what else? Aquaman Andromeda. That's a Black Label book. The first 4 issues of Duo, the first 4 issues of Blood Syndicate. There's so many great books that came out in the last 6 months. Batman, Superman, World's Finest, #1. Previously, the only 2 that were available were 1 and 2. Now you can get the last 4 issues of World's Finest. And all you're paying is $99 a year. Now, if you were paying the monthly subscription for DC Universe, it was $7.99 a month. So that's basically $8. 8 times 12 is $96. You spend $4 more and you get access to all of this. To me, that's a no-brainer. But to some people, I get it. It's cost prohibitive. That's a lot to spend at one time. But do you guys think people are going to like suddenly stop going to the comic shop because they have all this available to them? Because presumably, and this is a real thing, after I get caught up on all these books, I don't have to buy DC books anymore. Like, I can just not have a DC section in what I'm getting, buy Marvel and indie books exclusively, and then just read the DC stuff a month later when it hits my subscription. I mean, I'd be well within my right to do so because I did pay for the subscription. Tayshawn says the market will always go up and down, but ultimately not go anywhere. Same thing happened with record shops. Now vinyl sales are up 100% since 2019, and sales were growing steadily before that also. Yeah. I'm of the opinion, and maybe it's just because I enjoy physical media, but I don't think physical media is going anywhere. Like recently, there was a story about some TV show that HBO, Warner, Discovery decided they wanted to do a tax write-off on, and they literally took it down from all the marketplaces that it was on. But also, if you had purchased a digital copy of that show, they deleted it from your library. And so for reasons like that, like if there's something that I want it physically. I want it around me. I don't want an NFT. I don't want a PDF. I don't want, some weird paywall on the internet in the cloud where I can't download it myself. Like, for as cool as this is that I could read Flashpoint Beyond #5, if the DC Universe server goes down, I can't read Flashpoint Beyond #5. Right? So there's always, to me, a draw for physical media and being able to own it and put it wherever you want to put it, right? I'm in a room surrounded by comics, and now I'm surrounded by comics and sneakers. And as chaotic as it gets in this room, I like the fact that it's there. It's not going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? There's always going to be people who prefer physical over digital. Same reason physical book retailers still exist. They'll never go anywhere. That's true. There's still Barnes & Noble. Let's see. I enjoy going to my LCS. I also enjoy reading books offline. What I will say is I enjoy having the issues as quickly as they're available. I love like that sort of appointment viewing. It's kind of like watching a TV show as it comes out as opposed to binging it, right? Like that day on social media where everybody's talking about Game of Thrones or Abbott Elementary or whatever it is a fun day. And I feel that way about comics. Problem is, when I was just trying to read comics physically, I didn't get to participate in that day anyway because I was overwhelmed by all this stuff piling up on my desk. You know what I'm saying? Willie says, told my LCS I was going digital with DC as a courtesy. It felt like an awkward breakup, but he said he understood. I buy mostly indies anyway. Yeah, like I said, I do think that like after Dark Crisis, so starting in January, I think that's where I'm gonna make my clean break, where I stop buying certain DC books and focus on just collecting things that I really, really like, right? Like if Nightwing is still ongoing, I'll keep my Nightwing subscription. Um, I'm always going to be subscribed to Batman and Detective Comics. Like I'm just, I'm trying to keep my collection going. From Batman, I've got starting with City of Bane all the way up through current. I have every issue. With Detective Comics, I have every issue starting at 1,000. I have some back issues that collect stuff before, but I have a full concurrent run. Concurrent, that's not the word. Consecutive run from issue 1,000 all the way up to 1064, I think is the last one that came out. So, that's exciting to me. Like, I like owning that. I love owning every Milestone book ever, even though almost every Milestone book ever is already in DC Universe Infinite and I can read them on my iPad. It's a different feeling to know that instead of just being in my iPad temporarily, every Milestone book that I ever want to read is in a short box in my closet. And I also have like special commemorative ones as well, So I think making things available um, in a more democratized fashion allows people to fall in love with things quicker. And if they fall in love deeply enough, then they're gonna want it in other forms, right? I'm a huge Batman fan. If I see a Batman lunchbox, I might buy it just because I like Batman that much. Do I need a Batman lunchbox? No. I don't travel anywhere where I have to carry lunch. But if it looks cool enough, it's Batman, I'm probably gonna buy it. And that's just how it goes. So I think the move to a 30-day release window is a good move on the part of DC. But I understand shops who feel like it is like one of the final blows in a series of blows from DC Comics that have particularly hurt local comic shops. Dreamer says, "What happens if there was a Dark Crisis video game with every character ever in DC? I'd flip my stuff." That'd be cool. All right, sorry, man. Uh, that's the plan for my collection. Also, I've been excited about this since I heard it from you first. Word, yeah, man. I think because again, like, and if you read the DC solicits, let me go grab my latest DC Connect issue. 1 second. All right, so DC Connect issue 29, Batman Spawn on the cover, by the way. What DC is getting into is a whole lot of variant covers. We got a Francisco Mattina variant for Batman Spawn. I should say hate. I'm not a fan of Francisco Mattina covers. They look too much like video games, and that's not like what type of art I prefer in comics. But they got all sorts of different variant covers. There's 1 in 25 variants for Batman versus Robin. Look at this cover. Is that a cover? For Detective Comics 1067, right? So to be able to go through and just buy really cool covers of books is fun for me. And I'll be able to afford them because I'm not buying every other DC book that I didn't really necessarily need to buy, but I wanted to be current on what was happening in the DC universe, right? So, yeah, man, I think this is a dope move. And I think that, yes, some comic shops are going to feel an initial shock. Yes, some people are going to cancel their DC subscriptions because, it's way cheaper. It is way cheaper. You guys know what I spend on DC Comics every week because I tell you what I spend on DC Comics every week. It's usually $20 to $30 a week. So in 2 months at the latest, I spend what I would have spent on the ultimate or ultra infinite subscription. So I would literally be saving hundreds if I decided to not buy any DC comics anymore. But that's not what I'm going to do because I'm a fan. And fans buy stuff when they like it. But I'm just looking at all these variants in this DC catalog, and I'm very, very excited about them. This cover for Nightwing 99, that's a dope cover. But also, the Jamal Campbell cover is dope. Oh, Jamal Campbell is going to be the artist on Superman starting in January. And who was here when I did my Naomi season 1 review and specifically said in that review, I want to see Jamal Campbell drawing Superman. Somebody give him a AAA book. So I'm excited that it's happening. Willie Survives says I'm all over that static cover with his hair standing, plus it's a full appearance of Ebon. Yeah, that static cover with his hair standing is dope. That's the Olivier Coipel variant, if I'm remembering correctly. That's not coming out till February. I don't think that's in this issue of DC Connect. But I know what you're talking about because they had previously solicited for a different month. But yeah, so I think it's dope. I think it's a really dope update. I'm curious to see like how well it does because now, and that's something that's exciting. Now when I'm recommending different books and series in my what I'm getting, I know there's one guy. I think his channel was like Let's Go Duck or the Duck Podcast, something like that. But he was literally like, I'm only reading whatever's in DC Universe. So, and I come back to watch your videos 6 months later so I know which ones to look out for. That's what he told me. Well, now there's more issues of books that he can read. And I think that's dope to make comics available at an affordable price for people who just want dope stories. I think it helps to subvert the collector and reseller market. And I think it democratizes things in general. And again, it puts the focus on story because if everything's available and everything's digital, now on the back end, they know exactly which series are performing well and which ones aren't before they ever, well, not before they ever hit the store because the store still gets exclusives first. So the collectors still get to be collectors. But if you just want to read, you can read. And I like that. I like that a lot. What are your thoughts on the CW? You can be honest. I can handle criticism. I don't watch TV. I mostly don't watch TV. The exception has been Abbott Elementary. And even that I'm 2 episodes behind on. I spend all my time making videos about comics or reading comics. But mostly making videos about them. Are you excited about the new Black Adam movie? I'm excited for superheroes being in cinema again. That made me sound like an old man. But one of my wife and I's favorite things to do is go to the movies and watch superheroes. So my wife is a huge MCU fan. I kind of fell off the MCU after Endgame. And ever since like the MCU has been more TV show driven than movie driven, I kind of fell off that bandwagon. But I'm very excited to go to a movie theater and see superheroes on the screen again. There's no experience like it to me. I really enjoy it. So I am excited about the Black Adam movie. I don't know what it means for the future of the DC Extended Universe or anything like that, but hopefully it's good. And hopefully DC gets to make more movies because in my opinion, DC has some of the most iconic characters in comics. And I'm not even just talking about Batman. And so there's absolutely an opportunity there for DC to make some major noise and make really good movies. And hopefully that's what we get out of this. I don't need it to be interconnected, shared universe. I just want dope movies featuring superheroes that are fun. Tired of the Marvel versus DC. I wish they would come together and make one big company. I don't wish for that. I think competition is good. I I think fandom can make it more hostile than it really needs to be, and more hostile than it really is in real life. But I'm not mad at competition. Glitter and Duct Tape says, "Hey Tyler, how's everyone?" Tyler says, "I'm doing well, man. Can't complain, man. How are you? Hope you're doing well." So honestly, guys, I think it's about time to wrap up. But I really just wanted to just talk about how this whole update from DC Universe really changed the game for me. Because again, I'm backing up because I'm just looking at this huge stack of comics. Like, let me just show some. Let me show you guys. I have books that I just did not put away because for me, if I put a comic book in a short box, I am never going to look at it again. So there are full mini series and maxi series. This is Batman Catwoman. Haven't read an issue since issue number 3. But now I can go back and read it all because instead of being 6 issues behind, I'm 1 issue behind. And in the case of Batman versus Catwoman or Batman Catwoman, the whole series is now available digitally for 1 low subscription cost. So now I can put all these books away and they'll be safe. And my daughter won't get to them. And I can be happy. So it's dope. Digital Blackface says, "I want a JLA versus Avengers movie. Eventually, that'll probably never happen. That would be fun to watch, a JLA Avengers movie. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't think it'll ever happen." Saw a video saying one way for DC to make a clean slate with their somewhat wonky cinematic universe is by inserting a Flashpoint. Well, I think that's what the Flash movie coming up is supposed to be, starring Ezra Miller. But Ezra Miller is on a campaign to like destroy themselves. So I don't know. But apparently that movie is still happening. Ezra Miller just did reshoots, according to, comic book news outlets. Now I'm sitting here organizing all these books that I need to go put in the short box. I probably need to go buy some short boxes to put these in. But you don't know how excited I am to be able to put these books away, knowing that I can just pick up my iPad and read whatever I want. And to be fair, I could have done it the whole time. I could have bought these books digitally the whole time. But again, I don't want to pay physical prices for something that only exists digitally. So that's why I was buying physical issues this whole time. So for my specific use case, this is a great win-win scenario. Some comic shop owners may beg to differ. I think they'll be fine if they had real fans as customers. And with that, we had a very fun-filled show. Oh, let's see. Kevin says, "You have DC Universe when it first came out? It was really dope." Yes, I loved it. I was reading comics on my TV with the Roku app. Like, I loved the original DC Universe app. The new DC Universe Infinite app sucks compared to that. Like, think about it. You could read whatever comics you wanted. And to be fair, the library wasn't as robust as it is now. There weren't as many titles available as there are now. But basically everything you wanted to read was there, with the exception of stuff in the last 6 months. And they had a Roku app where you could not only read comics, but watch every DC show. Static Shock was in there. Batman the Animated Series was in there. Young Justice was in there. That's how I got into Young Justice, was through the DC Universe app. And to be fair, most of this stuff did find its way onto HBO Max. But I just loved that there was an app dedicated to everything DC Comics, including comics and media. For someone like me who was a fan of animation before I was a fan of comic books, it was like the best of both worlds, and it was great. And honestly, I wish we could go back to that. Like, that was dope. But we're not going to do that. Because Warner Brothers, Discovery, HBO, whatever their company is called nowadays, they won't allow for it. I always do that. Like, I will sit there and talk until my throat is like a desert and I have water sitting here. First thing I did was watch Titans and Justice League Unlimited. Yeah, I watched all 3 seasons of Young Justice because they brought back Young Justice for the DC Universe app with season 3. And I watched all of that. And then I watched Batman the Animated Series from beginning to end. And then Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. My wife still loves Justice League and Justice League Unlimited and will turn it on if she can't sleep at night. I don't know if she doesn't read comic books, but she loves DC animated stuff. Admittedly, she's a Superman fan, but says that Batman gets the better movies, which is fun. But anyway, I don't have much else to talk about. My wife left and she took the girls with her, so I'm just sitting here killing time. But I probably should be organized in this office, putting those books away. So, you guys, thank you so much for joining me on the Hangout. Once again, shout out to Omari and the Blacktooth Battalion campaign. You can back it at bjkicks.link/blacktooth. And man, like, it was a dope interview. He's got a dope campaign. DC is changing the game. Comic shops are still going to live forever. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And what else? Wakanda #1 was dope. And it's actually a recommend from me. And with that, appreciate you guys being here. I hope you saw something you liked in this video. And if not, that's cool. Because you can always buy what you like. Just make sure you read what you buy. And be nice to others. Because kindness makes the world go round. Till next week. Peace.